is that, again, compared with fuel oil, we've saved 13 million metric tons of CO2 emissions. If you like playing around with numbers, 13 million metric tons of CO2 is like taking all the cars in Israel off the road for a year. So it's a very positive thing from an environmental standpoint. And then what we'd like to do, what we hope to do, is use Mary B as a storage facility. Because if you remember that swing, what we would like to do is be able to produce wells at one rate and have the excess go into storage so that we build up a strategic storage supply for Mary B. That's the goal. You've already seen this picture, and this is something that this room actually knows very well, I think, but I show this to people that don't know it very well. And the point of this is that whenever you go out and do seismic and you start to explore, I think people, not these people, but people have a concept that when you look under the ocean, that you see something like this, and you don't see something like this. And so what I like to point out is that there's actually a bit more involved with that. And this is the vessel that acquired the seismic from Friedman4 Vanguard. And it's just a picture of it. And again, you guys are familiar with this, but so the streamers behind that are 7 kilometers long. There's 12 streamers back there collecting the seismic. There's the air guns right there. And then you have the seismic acquisition. So, I mean, we actually kind of go across an area like you're mowing a big lawn with this thing and turn around and that's what's behind the seismic acquisition. Again, you guys are familiar with that. And I also show this, and forgive me for this, I showed this, I got this off the internet. Seismic doesn't look like those other pictures. It looks a little bit more like this when it comes across, but again, that's for a So I wanted to talk just a little bit about a decision tree, and this is a generic decision tree. I made these percentages up. But this is something that, this is sort of how we sort of clinically look at something when we're exploring. So we're sitting here. If we haven't explored yet, if we haven't started drilling yet, we're sitting back here on this decision tree. And in different areas, these are different percentages, of course. I mean, raw exploration worldwide is about a 25% chance of discovery and 75% of a dry hole. You get in some areas, and obviously those numbers increase because you're more familiar with the basin or you have some knowledge of the basin. And so playing with numbers, this is kind of a split in this particular example. And you either are going to hit a productive sand or something that looks like a productive sand, or you're not. And so you have that first split, and we look at that. And then after your discovery, then you have more to do. You have appraisal wells to do. You have drill stem tests to do, all trying to show, is it what you thought it was? Or is it what you hoped it was? And even beyond there, I mean, and again, this crowd knows this a lot better than most, but beyond there, is it going to be as you hope? I mean, when you draw that pretty picture out there of what you think the reservoir extent is it going to be as you hoped, or is it not? And so if you come up to the next tree, maybe it's as you hope, but maybe it's compartmentalized, and it's still a prospect. I mean, it's still a good prospect, but you're going to spend twice as much money because you're going to drill twice as many wells because it's compartmentalized. You don't know that at first. You try to find that out, but you don't know that. So maybe there's a chance of that, which is a different economics for you. And then are there reservoir quality issues whenever you step out and do your appraisal wells and get out on the edges of the reservoir? Is the same quality going to be there, or is it going to be of a different quality? And there's a pretty high chance that it's not going to be the same quality. It's not going to be what you hope. And of course, that can go both ways. Certainly realize that. But I guess the point here is it's pretty clinical. When we sit back here, what we do is we do the economics. You get down to these cases, and then when you go down the decision tree, these cases have these percentage chances of happening, right? And so all we do is we calculate the net present value of that case. We calculate it of that case and calculate it of this case. You know what that one is. That's a great big negative. And just add all those net present values together and see if you have a project. So I mean, the point that I'm making right here is you're not sitting right here looking at, oh, isn't that a wonderful rate of return on that? You're sitting right here when you make these decisions. And so again, it's just clinical. So we did all that, and the Tamar discovery, this was in 2008, using the Atwood Hunter rig. That's a picture of that rig, and had a discovery in 2009, as you know. And again, for this, I like to show just industry photos of kind of, we talk about well logging a lot, and again, this group doesn't really need it, but I like to show what these tools look like. I'm constantly amazed that tools that are so expensive in the oil business actually look like great big chunks of iron, and it's because they have to go down hole and withstand a lot of things. So there's no telling how much that tool costs right there, but this is one of the logs that we're running into the hole. This is not us, this is an industry photo. And once again, I got this off the internet as well too. But when you run the logs, this is what I explained to people that are not familiar with it, is you're measuring the conductivity of the reservoir, and you're measuring the density of the fluids, using different tools, looking at the density of the fluids, and you're looking at the gamma ray signature of the stuff, looking at, is it going to be sand, or is it clay, and is it porous, and does it have water in it, or does it have hydrocarbons in it? But it all starts with little lines like these right here. So the next step, of course, is where we went with Tamar 2 next. We went 5.6 kilometers away and drilled Tamar number 2 to try to delineate and see, is the reservoir what we thought the reservoir was going to be. And you've probably seen this before. This is off of one of our presentations. And then the next step on that was to try to evaluate, is this a container that has transmissibility across it, or is it not? And so we looked at things like, do we think that there's sand-to-sand contact on here on the A, B, and C sand for Tamar? And we looked at these areas here, and we looked at contacts, and we looked at the pressures and the pressure gradients right across what we thought was the contact to see if we thought we had a similar gas-water contact in there. Which, of course, if you do, it gives a lot. It certainly suggests that you're in a reservoir that's connected, which is what we want. Then the next step was we correlated the well log and the core data. So we actually cored Tamar number 2 and compared with what we saw on the log on Tamar number 1. And we had calculated things like porosity and water saturation, and obviously off of the logs. And then we compared, we correlated that back with what we saw in the core and the logs on Tamar number 2. So we were able to do that and tweak our numbers a bit, which is a constant process of getting more data and tweaking the overall model. And all that goes into, we like to show this, our fancy 3D visualization center in Houston. And the thing I guess the thing I point out about that is it doesn't start out like that. I mean, we will continue we get these big fancy models of all this, and then the next time we drill a well and get more data, the whole model changes. Not the whole model, but the model changes as we refine that. It's just a process of continuous refinement. So that defines, at that point, the Tamar project, and this is what the Tamar project looks like now. So these are the dual 16-inch flow lines that are going to come into the Tamar platform on the shelf. The yellow is the umbilical coming into, and this is the new Tamar platform that will be there. This is existing Mary B platform. And so this is the 30-inch line that comes out of Mary B and goes to Ashdod. And here's where we're going to tee into that 30-inch line. This is a condensate line coming in, and this is a condensate line coming over here to Mary B. So that is sort of the project. Drill 5 wells to 5,000 meters, install this subsea development and 1,700 meters of water, install two 16-inch pipelines at 150 kilometers all the way down to the south, build and transport that platform, and then install it. So I thought it might be interesting just to talk about a generic cost curve, and I'm trying to give a flavor for some of the stuff that's always in front of us when we're doing a project like this. I think that if you do any big project with anything, you have a cost curve that's an S curve like this. I mean, my guess would be that it doesn't matter what you're building. If it's a big project, it looks something like this. It certainly does for us. And obviously it's not smooth like that. It's got bumps in it where you go do big contracts for things like rigs and lay vessels and things like that. So Tamar itself happens to be about a 3-year span and about $3 billion. And so this is for development of Tamar. And I guess what I'm familiar with is this area right in here, you're doing a lot of engineering design. You're doing a lot of pre-feed work. We're doing a lot of study, a lot of design. You're spending a lot of money, but you're not getting yourself too far committed to the place where you also don't have things very well defined. You think you know what the economics are going to be based upon all your assumptions, and you just continue to refine those assumptions. But it's somewhere right in here where the curve starts getting steep, and it actually tends to wind up being that first big bump when you're going to do one of those big contracts and you've got to change. That's where the rubber kind of meets the road, and that's where the board of directors says, stop everything, I need more definition. I need definition. I need you to be more sure about all the things that have to do with this project before we sanction it.